What's going on, friends? This is Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. It is Wednesday. Hope everyone is having a good week so far. What's the weather like where you're at? So I'm in the I've told you I split my time between the DMV, Baltimore, DC area, and Nashville, where my kid is. And I gotta tell you, it's like not even winter officially yet. I think for what, another week, a little less than a week. Um, and it's like been crazy cold. And I was in Nashville last weekend for his end of the season, fall season basketball tournament, and it was like brutally cold there. And I'm back in the DMV now, and it's like, I mean, it's just like, I think it's gonna warm up some, but man, it was like 20 degrees out or some crazy, 15 degrees, with the wind chill was like under 10 degrees. And I know this has nothing to do with Syracuse. And again, this is Syracuse Central. We talk about Syracuse basketball, football, and recruiting. Please subscribe if you feel so inclined. But yeah, it's like, oh man, it's like winter hasn't even come yet, and I'm already freezing my tush off. But anyway, I digress. It just brings me back to my time at Syracuse. I've told y'all I was there in the late 90s, graduating in 2000. Never missed a day of school there for snow. They always got the roads cleared off that I can remember. Of course, this was like, bazillion years ago. But I do remember falling on the sidewalks many a times, walking to class and probably walking home from Marshall Street, doing other things at the late night. But good times. Winter, snow, love it. All right, so speaking of Syracuse basketball looks to get back in the win column on Wednesday tonight. They play Mercyhurst. Syracuse had a really disappointing loss that we talked about earlier this week on Syracuse Central on Saturday to Hofstra. And now they will play Mercyhurst, which is in its second year in Division One. They play in the Northeast Conference. They're 4-7. They've lost 5 of 6. What can I say? This game is not going to move the needle at all in terms of Syracuse's net ranking and all that stuff, potential postseason resume. But their next 3 games are against Mercyhurst. Then let me just make sure. So it's Mercyhurst, Northeastern, Stonehill. Couldn't remember the order there. They're all quad 4 games as of right now, and I don't see that changing. Maybe Northeastern could climb into quad 3. We'll see. But again, I think it goes without saying Syracuse can't lose any of those games. And if they did lose any of those, I swear the fan base would be like fire Autry right now, which stinks. I don't even want to talk about that. But Hofstra is a solid good team. They just beat Pitt on the road as well. Their net ranking is like in the low 90s too, or at least it was when I taped this. But these other teams, like Syracuse, cannot lose. Anyway, let's assume Syracuse wins these next 3. They're 6-4, then up 9-4 in the non-conference. It's not ideal. It's not as bad as some of the last few years, but it's not ideal. 3 good, 3 losses to good teams, 2 of them close in Vegas, neutral site. A loss to a good team, but a mid-major at home in Hofstra, and then they beat Tennessee. So hopefully that stays a quad 1, but or I think right now it might be technically a quad 2, but if Tennessee ends up inside the top 30, the net, I believe it'd be quad 1. So look, the main thing for me, and for Syracuse, is just like, get your stuff together. And, hopefully Donnie Freeman is finally going to play. Make sure you're rebounding at a good pace. Have some actual offensive flow, not just a bunch of ISO dribbling around. Certainly their bread and butter, their strengths this year are getting out in transition, whether it's after a rebound or a deflection or steal, whatever. Get out, get fast break points, get points off turnovers, lead in those categories. Make more than 58% or 56% from the free throw line, whatever it is right now, dead last. Try and get some. Their 3-point shooting against Hofstra wasn't awful. I think they're 8 of 23. But, try and be efficient with your 3-point shooting. We need to get Nate George going a bit more. What else is there to say? I mean, I really don't have much other than this team is not, like, their season isn't over. And it's like you came off the high of beating Tennessee, and then you squeaked by St. Joe's. St. Joe's isn't a terrible team. and then you lose to Hofstra, so that takes the wind out of your sails. And now it's like, all right, let's win these next three, get to 9-4. Then their ACC slate starts on New Year's Eve against Clemson at home, and Clemson is looking like a solid team, at least so far. And it's at home, so you have an opportunity to potentially pick up a quad 1 or definitely a quad 2 win at home, and then they'll have more chances in the ACC. But for me, it's not just about what the record is, quote unquote. It's about this team like playing, like being on point, like Donnie getting back, making some more free throws, rebounding. I don't know. I just don't like, what is this team's identity? It's not like an awful team. They beat Tennessee. They're not awful. It's just like, I don't know. It just seems kind of We'll see. We'll see. Drop me score predictions in the comment section. Let me know what you think. All right, so these next two segments, I want to give a shout out to the ladies that do the Orange Zone podcast. I saw some stuff. I haven't listened to the whole podcast yet because it was coming out later on Tuesday, and I just had other things going on. But I did see a couple of tweets about their interview Jim Boeheim, and he touched on two topics that are important, I think, and I just wanted to, I'll mention what he says, and then I'll get in larger context. But again, shout out to Sam and Ashley, I believe. Great media members, and they do the Orange Zone pod. So the first one was the tweet or the zeet or whatever you want to call it. Jim Boeheim told us today. This is Ashley and Sam, or Samantha, I should say. Jim Boeheim told us today, that was Tuesday, he believes Syracuse men's basketball needs a $10 million budget to be competitive in NIL. He did not say how much the team spent this season, but said they had more money than last year, where the budget was reportedly slightly over $10 million. Okay, so I've talked about this a little bit on Syracuse Central. I guess a couple things. Number one, so the primary mechanism for third-party NIL had been Orange United, which was a commercial collective that was the part of the Atlanta-based Neil student-athlete NIL. I broke that story about them opening in Syracuse. It was the September of 23, I believe. And they focused on all sports. And I talked once in a while with Mark Hayes, who was their general manager, super nice guy. And he did tell me that Orange United was targeting like $2 to $2.5 million for the 2024-25 season. So, I don't have a final number, and they don't have to disclose that, but that was where they were. And, I definitely heard anecdotally that they had more money this offseason for this year's team. And that would make sense given they retained Donnie Freeman and JJ Starling, their two best players. And then, they brought in Kyan Anthony, Sadiq White, and a 5-member prep class, and then a 6-member transfer class, including Nate Kings, who I think reportedly was going to get $750K, at least according to one article I saw. Nate George, the point guard, I'm sure wasn't cheap. The other guys, Betsy, Soare, William Call III, and Zephyr. What I don't know, but the larger context here is, I don't disagree with Jim Boeheim, and so there's a couple components here. Number one, revenue sharing started this year, the 2025-26 season, which means schools can pay their players directly for their NIL. And in this first season, it was $20.5 million, I believe, was the max. And, John Wildhack has said, he said numerous times that they were going to share the maximum amount with it. They weren't going to break down percentages, but the predominant share was going to be in football, men's basketball, women's basketball. I really hope lacrosse and non-revenue Olympic sports got some too, because they deserve it. But again, the larger context is you've got revenue share, and then you've got third-party NIL, which was like what Orange United was doing and what SU football NIL does as a supplement. And John Wildhack has talked more than once about the importance of third-party NIL to supplement revenue share. And it's important for a school like Syracuse, which is trying to compete in the ACC and against big programs nationally as well, especially in football and basketball, to have like good third-party NIL and then the revenue share and then that whole piece together to be competitive in terms of roster retention, transfer portal recruiting, and prep recruiting. And so as I reported in the past for Inside the Loud House, and I've talked about here, Orange United, earlier this year, I can't remember if it was November or October. It doesn't matter. It wasn't that long ago. Orange United shut its doors because Sunil, Student Athlete NIL, was trying to merge with another organization that runs collectives, and that merger fell through, and then Sunil had to I can't remember if they sorry about this. I don't remember if they filed for bankruptcy, but anyway, they closed down. It doesn't matter. They closed down. Orange United was no more. I got to talk to Mark Hayes a little bit after that, and it was, off the record, just, kind of chumming around, and he gave me some of his thoughts, and I'll just keep that between us because, again, I respect him, and it wasn't an on-the-record conversation. But the point is that they have, if we're talking third-party NIL at supporting Syracuse student athletes, or Syracuse athletes, let's be honest, you have SU football NIL supporting football. Where is a collective third party wise that's supporting other sports? And I've heard some rumblings about maybe there's another collective, and I've been trying to nail that down. I've been talking to some people. I don't have anything official to report. I've had some, kind of off the record conversations, but stay tuned on that, hoping to get more clarity. My point here is that Boeheim talks about this $10 million budget, and I believe him. But, like, I don't know how much of the $20.5 million for this year in rev share is going to men's basketball. So it's kind of hard, this is anecdotal, and it's kind of hard to know. And they did get $1 million for the Players Era Festival in Vegas, and I broke that a long time ago on Inside the Loud House, and others have reported, blah, blah, blah. So, like, their budget this year was obviously, for this coming season was solid. But to Boeheim's point, $10 million is a pretty big number. And the rev share, that 20.5 max, will go up, I believe, year to year. I don't know how much it is in 26, 27. But I really feel like if Syracuse, again, because I think SU football NIL, from what I hear, does a good job with football. If Syracuse really wants to be competitive from a NIL standpoint, again, talking about rev share and third party, they need to have a strategy. And, I've asked SU Athletics spokespeople multiple times in recent months, and more recently after Orange United, closed down, like, what's the strategy for sports beyond football? And they've told me they're telling fans and donors and what alumni and whatever to, like, donate to SU Athletics champion Cuse $50 million 3-year fundraising campaign. And that's fine, but, like, are you really telling me that, like, longer term the strategy is that there's going to be no third party NIL organization supporting sports beyond football at Syracuse? That's not going to work. After Orange United closed down, I talked to multiple NIL experts, whether attorneys or just others in the industry, and most of them preferred not to be named directly, and that's fine. And they weren't necessarily, like, trashing Syracuse, but they did talk on background just to the point that if a school doesn't have a third-party NIL third-party NIL collectives, there's been all this stuff, this and that, and you got the College Sports Commission, and, like, who knows what the future holds. But for right now, they said that a school that doesn't have third-party NIL in a sport like men's basketball, to supplement, to support, help supplement rev share, that's problematic. So again, I'm not trashing Syracuse, I'm not trashing my alma mater. I just feel like Jim Boeheim's talking about a $10 million figure. They need third-party NIL. That's. I'll leave it at that. And I'm gonna try and get more information about potentially this other collective out there, and also I'll check in with SU Athletics people to see what their strategy is, because you can't just say, okay, donate to the SU's fundraising campaign just for, that's not a long-term. It's a great campaign, and I hope they get 50 million or more, but I feel like if assuming that third-party NIL collectives are going to remain in operation, they need to have one supporting sports beyond football. And also, yes, playing in, like, a Players Era or other tournaments that might pop up that present NIL. That's great too. And definitely, I think Syracuse had more money than it did the year before because based on the roster. Now, whether or not they overpaid for some of those players, that remains to be seen. All right. So another part, again, just like based off some tweets. I haven't listened to the whole pod, but Ashley and Sam asked, on their Orange Zone pod, according to what I saw on Twitter, they asked Jim Boeheim how long he thinks a head coach deserves to establish a program. And his response was, quote, every coach should get 5 years. Here's another quote. Now it's a rebuild every year, and you're putting a coach in a position of, I've got to have enough money to get good players. And so he's not wrong. He's not wrong. College sports, and again, we're just talking about Division I major college basketball right now, so we'll just focus on that. It is a rebuild every year. Jeez. I mean, Syracuse has 13 scholarship players, at least major scholarship players, not including Noah Liddell. 2 of them are returnees, Starling and Freeman. And then you've got 6 transfers and 5, high school incoming freshmen. I mean, that's tough. That's tough for chemistry. I get it. But 5 years. I have no problem. And we're obviously talking about Adrian Autry, and I was fine that he came back this 3rd year. I guess it depends on how he does. Like if they, are win at least 20 games, whether or not they get in the NCAA tournament, I don't know. Is Wildhack going to fire him if they don't get in the NCAA tournament? We'll see. There's going to be a new chancellor coming in. Is Wildhack going to have a job long term? We'll see. But 5 years, that's tough on a fan base. Again, if Autry, wins 21 or 22 games each of the next 3 years and is doing well with recruiting and they do get in the NCAA tournament, that's one thing. But I'm just telling you right now, if they don't get in this year and he comes back and then they're on the bubble, they're bubblicious, in year 4 and or year 5, that's not going to work. The fan base will not put up with that. It'll be bad. And I don't want that. I want Autry to keep coaching. I want the team to be winning. It's all good. But 5 years, I understand where Boeheim's coming from. I do. And I respect Jim Boeheim, and I've been a fan of Syracuse basketball since the 80s, dating back to Pearl and, the 87 team, the 89 elite team, elite 8 team. Yeah. And I went to school there in the 90s. Overlap with Griff. Again, I get it. I'm old school and I get all that, but 5 years? What do you think of that? I guess the easiest way for me to say it is I understand what Jim Boeheim is saying, and he's a Hall of Fame head coach, and I'm just not. I understand what he's saying, but I just don't think that's realistic. 5 years? But you got to also have context. What do those 5 years look like? Syracuse won 20 regular season games in Autry's first year for the first time in 10 years. And they ended up 20-12. And, if they had beaten NC State, which ended up winning the ACC tournament and going to the Final Four, but if they had beaten NC State and maybe they would have gotten in the tournament. And then you're thinking a lot differently, even though last year was rough. Donnie didn't play half the year or more than half the year. JJ was out. They just swung and missed in the portal, if you ask me. I think on paper, again, I think they got better players this year, and we'll see. They're 9-4 or 6-4 right now. We'll see. But 5 years, that ain't gonna happen unless they're, getting in the NCAA tournament or really close, or and I don't want to speculate too much or do all these what if scenarios, but I don't know, man. 5 years. How would you all feel if they didn't make the NCAA tournament this year, but that Wildhack, said, oh, but we're giving Autry 5 years? Syracuse Twitter would explode. Syracuse chat rooms that I'm in would explode. Anyway, I thought it was interesting what Jim Boeheim said, and I get it. I don't necessarily, it's not that I disagree with it. I just don't think it's realistic. All right, we're going to finish up here just with a little recruiting nugget. So there's a big showcase, throughout the year in high school basketball, there's all these showcase events. The Spalding Hoop Hall Classic in early January is huge. there's others. There was one that just went on. I talked about Jordan Smith Jr. and St. Paul the Sixth, being involved in, and there'll be others. And if there's Syracuse recruiting targets involved, I will, keep tabs on it. But one coming up here from, I believe it's Thursday to Tuesday, the 18th or the 23rd of this month, is the City of Palms Classic in Fort Myers, Florida. And it's a big showcase. It's one of the best ones on the calendar. And I believe there's some games later on either NBA TV or even some of the ESPN channels. I'll be curious to see. I haven't been able to nail down with sources, but I'll be curious to see if SU's in attendance, SU coaches. They do have a game, I believe, Saturday against Northeastern, right? So, but, again, it's from Thursday to Tuesday, so we'll see. In terms of Syracuse recruiting targets, there's not a lot of them, but a couple teams to maybe keep an eye on. One is St. Paul the Sixth Catholic High School from Northern Virginia, which is where All-American 2026 5-star shooting guard Jordan Smith Jr. plays. He's Syracuse's lone remaining top target in 2026, unless there's reclass guys from 27. He's unofficially visited Syracuse twice. He's got Syracuse in his top 6, so he's one guy. Long Island Lutheran High School from New York, which is where Kyan Anthony played before he joined Syracuse. They have a 2027 5-star wing small forward, Musa Kamasoko, who was offered by Syracuse about a year ago in December of last year. He's one of 15 guys in 2027 that have been offered by Syracuse, and he's been rumbled around as a potential reclass. I don't personally, again, when I have information to share that's credible, I will share it. And if I don't want to overstate. So I don't know how heavy Syracuse is with Musa right now. But they did offer him a year ago, and I'll be curious to see if Syracuse is in attendance. And they could be in attendance at the City of Palms for other guys I don't even know about yet, guys that haven't been offered. But that is a guy who holds a Syracuse offer. And then the other team I know of a guy that holds a Syracuse offer, it's Paul Osarui, who's a 2027 5-star big man, top 5, top 10 national prospect, just like he plays at CI Bella Vista in Phoenix, where a couple of former recruiting targets play. Vaughn Carvala, who's headed to Indiana, Miles Sadler, who's headed to West Virginia, a couple other guys. Oh, by the way, I think that Musa Kamasoko from Lehigh moved up to number 1 in the rankings according to, I think it was Rivals in 2027 after Bruce Branch reclassed to 2026. So that's kind of cool. Syracuse should definitely stay heavy for him, number 1 in his class, at least according to one recruiting service. But Osarui was offered by Syracuse in the fall of 2024 when they offered a couple of his teammates. Kind of the same with the dude from Lehigh. I don't know how heavy Syracuse is with Osarui right now. His name has been floated as a potential reclass to 2026, along with the Lehigh guy, Kamasoko, Clyde Walters, who I've reported about, and he officially visited not too long ago, Theo Edema, who's officially visited Syracuse, and Anderson Diaz, who has a Syracuse offer. Those are some of the guys I've heard about. I know Syracuse is involved with Walters and has been with Edema. Some of these other guys, not so sure. So, I'll be curious to see, again, assuming Syracuse is at the City of Palms Classic. I assume they will be for at least a day or two. Who they're taking a look at. So I'll try and get more intel on that. And that'll do it for today's show. This is Neil Adler with Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. As always, please drop me comments about what you like and what you don't like. Please hit that subscribe button if you feel so inclined. Tell your friends. If you don't like my show, don't tell your friends. Or you can tell your friends. It's all... Look, you know me. I like to provide information. I like to have a good time with this. And it's all good. I have a thick skin. If you're not feeling me or this, it's cool. But tell me what I could do to make it better, because I want to build a community here, and there's other great pods out there too. And I'm not saying I'm like the only one, but like I'm trying to provide information on Syracuse basketball, football, and recruiting. And just tell me what you're into. Tell me what you want to hear about. You want to talk about stuff beyond Syracuse? You want to talk about music, movies, food, whatever. I'm all about doing stuff like that too. Let's just have some fun with this, especially the holiday season. All right, so this is going to do it for today's edition. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, friends. Couldn't get that out. Syracuse men's basketball hosts Mercyhurst tonight at 7 p.m. ACC Network Extra, which is annoying, but we will have coverage on that later in the week. I appreciate your support. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.